Last year was a very tough place for me, I could say. I was battling, let me call them demons. I had no idea what were. It wasn't the first time. It's something I've been battling, and I used to think it's something that comes and goes. It's only that last year it was very overwhelming. It was very overwhelming to a point that I was so much in pain. I felt like someone was literally squeezing my heart. And it got to a point that I tried reaching. For the first time, I reached out. I never used to reach out. I didn't used to reach out before. I used to be so suicidal. The first time I tried suicide, I was actually in class 3. And I never used to tell anyone. There's a woman who raised me. That woman is the only person I used to open up to. There's a time she would find me bleeding. There's a time I had cut myself, and she used to keep my secrets. But last year it was very overwhelming. I didn't want to reason. I opened up. I told a couple of friends. I told them how I'm feeling, and they decided to help me. But since that help wasn't coming earlier, I tried committing suicide again. And by the time that I was going through counseling and antidepressants, they really helped. I could say they helped big time. Either both of them or one of them, but they worked. That's when I decided, what if someone else out there is struggling as me, but they are not talking? So I had to come out. But I had also to put out the HIV so that I can show people this wasn't the case. This wasn't the reason why I used to be depressed. What I'm passionate about is teaching, especially young girls, to accept themselves, and especially those who are HIV positive. And I've come across people who have been depressed out of HIV. And like me, I wouldn't say HIV was the cause of my depression. But I've come across people who have been depressed because they've tested positive, and they feel like they don't want to go on. So that's usually what I educate people about: acceptance and just adherence to drugs. Especially, I've come across people who don't want to take ARVs because normally when you're starting ARVs, you are told when you start them you shouldn't stop. So it's better you don't start them at all. I have people who I met last year who up to date they haven't taken ARVs because they're still in denial. That's someone who's depressed, they're just in denial. So that's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about giving the testimony. This is me, I've been there, and look at me now. And disclosure as well. When you're disclosing to someone you're close to, someone you're supposed to disclose to, because you don't just disclose to everyone. That's something I'm passionate about as well, ever since I came public. And disclosure hasn't been a problem to me even before me coming public. So that's something I'm passionate about a lot. Yes. Most people don't want to get tested because they fear the outcome. Honestly speaking, if I was HIV negative, I also wouldn't test. So I do understand them a lot. But I usually tell them, by the time you are testing because you have gotten sick, this HIV has already overwhelmed you, probably even going to the last stage. So I normally advise them, it's advisable you do the test as early as possible, because probably tomorrow they are finding the cure. So you'll be among those people who are being cured. What if you are just there seated, you don't want to test? By the time they are finding out, you are already on your deathbed. So that's something I normally tell people who don't want to get tested, because they normally say what you don't know won't kill you, but what you know later on is killing you already. I also have people who have tested positive. I have someone who came to me just the other day. She tested positive, and then I told her, This is not even, it's not something worse than something you are prohibited to eat certain food, you are prohibited to live a certain lifestyle because of such a disease. But with HIV, you have no hindrance. And she was so bitter. She told me, I know, but this is going to be tormenting for the rest of my life. I had a whole life ahead of me. And you have to give them an example with something realistic like me. So I had to tell them, as I'm speaking to you, do you even know that I'm positive myself? And I've been living positively for my whole life. I won't lie, it's been tormenting, but I couldn't just stay there and pity myself. It's not even, it doesn't make sense. So that's something you also sit down and tell someone, fine, you've tested positive, so how long are you going to feel pity for yourself? It's not going to change anyway. Those who test negative, I usually tell them, you have tested negative, but that doesn't mean you go around and live freely. You also have to be cautious. And you also have to test with anyone you're getting in a relationship with. So that means you shouldn't be sleeping around, because if you're sleeping around, are you going to test everyone you're sleeping with? No, it doesn't make sense. So you have to pick someone who you are firm with, go get tested and continue the journey. Also, when you're positive, this is called discordance. When you're positive and negative, it also can work according to science nowadays. I'm a living testimony because I've been in such a relationship before for 3 years and it was working. So that's something I also give. I love giving people realistic examples, and I use myself. Yeah. I used to fear dating, but I used to date. I never used to disclose. By then, I was in high school. That was petty relationships. Until I got to college, I got someone, we dated, and I disclosed from the word go, of which we never got to the intimacy level. So until then, when I disclosed, that's when I realized it's not even hard, because he accepted me the way I was. So then I realized it's not even hard. What's the worst thing that anyone can do to you anyway? And then we broke up, incompatible differences, and I got into another relationship that was taken to another level, and I disclosed from the word go as well. And I can attest up to date, even though we broke up, he's still negative, because we used to go to the hospital together and such. And yes, I currently started dating again with an HIV negative person. Yes, nobody should fear. You live normal, especially when you know your viral load is undetectable. This is going to be so hard explaining, but I'll try explaining it in an easier way. There is this, when you've taken your drugs for so long and faithfully on time without missing, you get to a point that your virus are suppressed to a point that you can test negative, but that doesn't mean you are cured. You are still positive. It's just that the virus is not found in the blood, it's hiding in the tissues. And this is when, by the way, you find people being lied to. You are cured, especially in churches, those prophets. And at such a point, that's when you can't transmit the virus to anyone who is negative. The chances of infecting them is 99.9%. You can't infect them. That's all. So yeah, you don't fear dating because you are HIV positive. You can date anyone you want, especially when you know your viral load is undetectable. But that doesn't mean if your viral load is still reading, you also can't date. You just take precautions, because there are also PrEPs and PEPs. These are the drugs that are given to people to prevent one from getting infected. CD4 is basically the immunity system. That's the one that they are testing. They normally don't test that nowadays. They test the viral load. The viral load now is the virus that they are testing, the amount of virus that you're having in your body. Yeah.